and the role that nitric oxide can play in slowing that aging process. So, aging is a challenge, and things happen as we get older that makes life difficult. One thing is, in adulthood, all physiological and metabolic processes in the body start to slow down. This is directly related to the decline in the ability to activate protein synthesis in the body. We can think about this with a diminished rate of protein synthesis means a reduced amount of enzymes, hormones production, which compromises many metabolic processes. Now, it's also it means a diminished rate of connective tissue and skeletal muscle synthesis. And the loss of muscle tissue with age is related to, or referred to as sarcopenia, and has many adverse health consequences. So when we can't activate protein synthesis, repair, and maintain muscle mass, this brings about many health abnormalities. So with age then, we lose about 40% of muscle mass from age 30 to 70. There's also a decline in muscle strength then, and about 8% decrease in muscle strength per decade after the age of 50 occurs. And between, with a total decrement of 30 to 40% of peak strength at the time of death. Associated with this is a drop in muscle power. And actually that declines faster than strength. And it's more related to functional limitations that occur with aging. So the ability to walk, stand up, move around, and so forth is more related to the loss of muscle power than it is to muscle strength. Here's a graph showing the decline in muscle strength over time. So we can see that blue represents strength, red represents power. We can see that strength starts to decline at about age 40, 45, and really picks up at age 50. And power starts to decline early on, about age 30 or so, and declines at a slightly faster rate. The consequences of loss of strength, then, is functional limitations and disabilities, ability to move around, orthopedic problems and the risk of fall and damaging oneself. But it's also related to, and a lot of people don't realize this, is cardiovascular disease, heart attack, and stroke. There's a good high relationship there. Some forms of cancer, type 2 diabetes, and all-cause mortality. Where, in other words, the weaker you become, the higher the risk of dying. And then, regardless of an individual's body composition and fat mass, strength is a long-term predictor of disease and life expectancy. So this is something that we want to be concerned with. And this is just a study to show, to illustrate this. These are individuals that were admitted to the hospital, and grip strength was measured. And then they were divided up into three categories. Those with the lowest grip strength, those with the highest grip strength, and those in the middle. Now, what this shows is cases of fatality rate. This is the number of individuals, or percentage of individuals that died once they entered the hospital because of these conditions: myocardial infarction, stroke, cancer, respiratory problems, pneumonia, from falls, and from fractures. So what we can see is that the weakest individuals, there was a much greater percentage of those individuals dying once they entered the hospital due to these conditions than those that were the strongest. In fact, those that were ranked the strongest were able to, a much higher percentage was able to survive these conditions. So what happens as we age? And why don't we produce enough protein? Why don't we maintain muscle mass and strength? With age, we develop a condition called anabolic resistance. And what this is the blunting of muscle protein synthesis response to resistance exercise and amino acid protein supplementation or consumption. So what this means is that when we work out, if we do resistance exercise, an older individual does not promote protein synthesis or build muscle as fast as young individuals. When we take in protein in our diet or our supplement post-exercise and so forth, the response to that supplement isn't as high. Right? So the body is not responding to the supplement as well as you get older versus young. So let's look at resistance to dietary protein. So basically, under fasting conditions or post-absorptive state, we compare young versus old. We can see that the rate of protein synthesis is about the same between young and old individuals in the post-absorptive state, and the rate of protein degradation or protein breakdown. So we can also see, based on the size of the arrow, that the rate of protein synthesis in the post-absorptive state is much less than the rate of protein breakdown, so the body's in negative nitrogen balance in a fasted state. We're losing more muscle than we're gaining. Now, in the post-perennial state, or after having eaten protein, we see that we activate protein synthesis in the muscle. But you can see that young individuals activate protein synthesis to a much greater rate than older individuals. And therefore, the positive nitrogen balance, or repair and development of muscle tissue, is much greater in young individuals than old individuals. And this is illustrated here by work by Moore, in which he gave young individuals supplements that are different concentrations of protein supplements. This is whey protein. And looked at the rate of protein synthesis. So the more protein that the individual consumes, the faster the rate of protein synthesis. And what we found was that amount of protein was about, to maximize the rate of protein synthesis, that amount of protein was about 20 grams. So a young individual can take 20 grams of complete protein, such as whey isolate, and maximize the rate of protein synthesis. However, older individuals can't do that. You'll see that for any given protein concentration, the rate of muscle protein synthesis is significantly less. And it actually takes about 40 grams of protein to maximize protein synthesis in older individuals. They're much less efficient at converting dietary protein into turning on protein synthesis. So, if we look at the recommended daily allowance for protein, it's 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day. Right? And so, this is established as the concentration or amount of protein we take to maintain our muscle mass and protein needs in the body. However, older individuals, when we get up above 50, 60 years of age, don't eat, a high percentage of the population do not get sufficient protein in. They don't take in 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day. In fact, about 40% don't do this. To top it off, it's now been suggested that older individuals should actually double their protein content during the day from 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight up to 1.4 to 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight. And if you set that as the new standard, then a much greater percentage of older individuals do not get sufficient protein in. Right? Now, the question is, this is one strategy that individuals can use, older individuals can use, to increase the protein in the diet. But why is it that protein synthesis isn't turned on to at the same rate as in young individuals? when we take in a protein supplement. So let's look at some data here. Resistance exercise. If we look at resistance to exercise-activated protein synthesis, so two things that anabolic resistance has: reduced activation of protein synthesis when we exercise, reduced activation when we take in protein. So in this particular study by Fry, looked at resistance exercise training as an ineffective treatment to improve muscle mass and strength in older adults. And that age is associated with a smaller amount of training-induced muscle hypertrophy. So he wanted to look at the reasons for that. And he looked at intracellular signaling and muscle protein synthesis measured in 16 older individuals and 16 younger individuals after resistance exercise training. And what he found is that if you look at the activation of mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, which is the protein that has to be activated to turn on protein synthesis in the muscle, you can see that after the resistance exercise, 3 hours after, 6 hours after, and 24 hours after, it was activated in young individuals. But it was not activated significantly in older individuals that did the same exercise workout. And if you look at the rate of protein synthesis that is occurring in the muscle, you can see that young individuals activated protein synthesis over a 24-hour period, but older individuals did not. Now, could the anabolic resistance be related to a decline in nitric oxide production? So, nitric oxide is a gas. It's inorganic, it's uncharged, and it's a diatomic molecule made up of one molecule of nitrogen, one molecule of oxygen. It's one of the most important signaling molecules in the body, and it's amazing that we didn't even know it was being developed in the body until about 1978, 1980, in that range. It's highly lipophilic and diffusible. And it has a very short half-life. So that's really important to have a short half-life, because you don't want to have nitric oxide being produced in large quantities throughout the body, but specifically when needed. Now, there's two ways that we develop nitric oxide, as our last speaker has talked about. One is that we convert arginine to nitric oxide and citrulline. And this requires nitric oxide synthase, and there are 3 different isoforms of that, as you previously saw. It requires a large number of cofactors that can be inadequate in the diet, and that will reduce the effectiveness of the nitric oxide synthase. And it requires oxygen for this process to occur. The other way in which it's produced is by converting nitrite to nitric oxide. Now, the way this works is our body can't produce nitrite, and it can't metabolize nitrate. But what we do is, in our foods that are high in nitrate, we take that in, it goes to the digestive system, and the nitrate is taken up, about 75% is eliminated from the kidney. But the other 25% goes to the salivary glands in the mouth and is converted into nitrite by these commensal bacteria that are in the salivary glands. So bacteria in the salivary glands convert nitrate to nitrite. We then take the nitrite up into the circulatory system, And that nitrite is reduced to nitric oxide by reduced hemoglobin and other reductase enzymes that are found in the blood and the tissue. Now, some of the foods that are sources for dietary nitrate, high sources are celery, cress, sorrel, lettuce, red beets, very popular red beets, spinach, and arugula. When we look at what nitric oxide does, it's a very important signaling molecule in the body, as we talked about. But it affects all these different processes: cardiovascular system, peripheral nervous system, regeneration of tissue, central nervous system function, cognitive function is very related to nitric oxide production, cell proliferation, respiratory tract from an athletic standpoint causes bronchodilation and less labored breathing when exercising, gastrointestinal and urogenital tract effects as talked about, and skeletal muscle and the immune system. Now, from an aging standpoint, we're going to be interested in what it does in the cardiovascular system, causing vasorelaxation of the blood vessels and improving muscle blood flow. And from the skeletal muscle, its effects on mitochondria. So, as we get older, our ability to generate nitric oxide declines. So this is the percent decline in nitric oxide production from age 10 to age 70. And what we can see is that by the age of about 40 to 45, at the age of 45, we only are generating about 50%, or have the capacity to generate only about 50% of the nitrate, or nitric oxide that we could when we were younger at age 20. So this falls significantly, our ability to generate nitric oxide. Now, there is a relationship between the decline, is there a relationship between the decline in nitric oxide production and sarcopenia? So, we know that Enos, the nitric oxide synthase that's found in endothelial cells that line the arteries and arterioles, is reduced significantly with age due to damage to the endothelial cells that line the arteries and arterioles and reduced expression of the enzyme. And this limits vasodilation and blood flow distribution. The other thing, there's another isoform called Enos, and that is found in skeletal muscle and is coupled to structural proteins in the skeletal muscle. And this complex, the nitric oxide synthase, coupled to dystrophin glycoprotein complex, is activated during muscle contraction. But with age, it becomes uncoupled, and the expression of Enos goes down. So, downregulation and uncoupling of Enos and its effects on muscle protein synthesis. So, let's look at the effects of protein, carbohydrate, and nitrate on skeletal muscle protein synthesis. So, what basically happens when we eat a meal or take in carbohydrate protein, we ingest that meal, the amino acids and carbohydrate rise in the blood. This causes insulin levels to rise, and insulin is an activator of Enos, and we generate nitric oxide. The nitric oxide increases vasodilation or muscle blood flow. So, we increase delivery of the amino acids to the muscle. We activate mTOR, turn on protein synthesis, and increase muscle growth and muscle repair. What happens when this is downregulated or damaged? So this is work out of Blake Rasmussen's lab University of Texas, Galveston, and which he had individuals, old controls that received sodium nitrocroside, which is a nitric oxide donor, and young individuals. And so what he did was they looked at microvascular perfusion. This is a camera technique looking at a video of microvascular perfusion. You can see under basal conditions that young individuals have a better muscle blood flow than older individuals. Now, when you infuse insulin, right, and activate Enos and increase muscle blood flow, you can measure that. And what he found was that old individuals that were infused with insulin alone saw a very little increase in muscle blood flow. And you can see with young individuals there was a very large increase. However, if he also infused with the insulin this nitric oxide donor, right, producing a nitric oxide through another process other than activating Enos, you can see that muscle blood flow was significantly improved and to the same extent that you see in young individuals. So insulin with the nitric oxide donor was very effective. When you look at muscle synthesis that occurred, fractional synthetic rate, you can see under basal conditions it's the same for all individuals. When insulin is infused alone in older individuals, there's very little turn on of protein synthesis. However, insulin in young individuals, when you infuse, goes up significantly with the improvement in muscle blood flow. And when you give the insulin plus the nitric oxide donor, you get very similar rates of protein synthesis between old and young individuals. And this is work that was done by the same lab in which they looked at leg blood flow and they compared young and old individuals. And in this particular case, what they did was they infused amino acids and the nitric oxide donor, nitrocroside. And what you can see is that when blood flow was controlled by providing a nitric oxide donor, the rate of our blood flow in the old and young individuals was the same. And when you do that, you get the same activation of mTOR, and you get the same rate of muscle protein synthesis. So the problem with protein synthesis in older individuals when you consume a protein supplement is not at the cellular level. It's really a reduction in activating muscle blood flow, causing vasodilation and improving muscle blood flow. And so we can go back to our little diagram, and now we can, when we give our meal, elevate amino acids and carbohydrate in blood, elevate insulin, turn on nitric oxide synthase, and generate nitric oxide and delivery of amino acids to the muscle. If this is defective, as it is in many older individuals, what we can do is take in dietary nitrates. I have a pre-meal so we can take in a pre-meal of inorganic nitrate. You have to do this several hours before the meal, but you can take in some type of nitrate supplement. And what that will do is increase the inorganic nitrate in the body, which will be converted to nitrite And that will enhance the muscle blood flow and therefore improve the rate of protein synthesis in the muscle of older individuals. So we have a way, not just by elevating the amount of protein we consume, but improving muscle blood flow by taking in a dietary nitrate supplement prior to a meal, and this will improve the efficiency of producing muscle protein synthesis and development and helping maintain muscle mass. So, improving muscle blood flow to age skeletal muscle by elevating nitric oxide levels normalizes the anabolic response to protein or amino acid supplementation. That the microvascular response to a nitric oxide donor persists in older individuals indicates that the protein synthesis signaling pathway downstream of nitric oxide remains intact in older individuals. And therefore, nitric oxide donors or other methods to elevate nitric oxide levels in older individuals constitutes one of the strategies to manage age-related sarcopenia. There's one other process that we can look at, and that's the downregulation and uncoupling of Enos and its effect on protein synthesis. So what we have here is we have Enos, which is bound to dystrophin glycoprotein complex. This is a structural protein in the muscle. And when we mechanically load the muscle, when we do work, this is activated. This activates the Enos. And we generate nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is required for the activation of satellite cells. And satellite cell activation is required for muscle repair and muscle growth. So if we're not generating nitric oxide, if this is downregulated or uncoupled and can't be activated by contraction, then we don't activate satellite cells, we don't get muscle hypertrophy. The other thing that happens is the nitric oxide synthase generates superoxides. And these superoxides are converted into peroxynitrite. And that peroxynitrite activates a calcium channel, TRPV1. So calcium enters the muscle, and calcium is an activator of mTOR, which activates protein synthesis and helps with muscle hypertrophy. So this is a very important enzyme when we start looking at muscle contraction and trying to increase muscle mass and strength. So the chronic effects of nitrate and training adaptation. It's interesting that this isn't really well known, and there's very few studies on this. In fact, there's only animal studies. So if you need a good dissertation topic, do some resistance exercise training with a nitrate supplement and look at the effects versus not having it. But this is on female rats, female mice, 18 months of age. So this is an old mouse. They have treatment groups of control, exercise, a nitric oxide donor, the isosorbate dinitrate, and then exercise plus the nitric oxide donor. And they trained these animals for 6 weeks. They were trained on running heels. So the exercise was voluntary heel running, and then the muscles that were looked at were the quadriceps, which is used during running, and the tibialis anterior, which is actually not used that much in running. So when you look at the change in muscle mass of the quadriceps, we can see that the control is here at 145 milligrams of weight. The exercised animals increased up to 169, but that was not statistically different. Those that received just the nitric oxide donor actually increased to the same extent as the exercised animals. When you had the combination, there was a significant improvement in the muscle mass, up to 182 milligrams of tissue from 145. And this represented a 25% increase in muscle mass in these very old animals in 6 weeks of training. It also improved vascularization of muscle, or capillary density. So here we can see that that the exercise improved vascularization, the nitric oxide donor improved it by itself. The combination of exercise plus the donor was superior. So we're improving capillarization, therefore distribution of substrate in the muscle. So in summary, exercise plus a nitric oxide donor may increase muscle hypertrophy during aging. Vascular density may also be increased. The results suggest that age-related muscle anabolic resistance to exercise can be overcome with an inorganic nitrate supplement. Prior to exercise, it may be advantageous to take a nitrate supplement to enhance training and adaptation. Timing is important here, though. Depends on which nitrate supplement you take as to how far in advance you have to take it. Usually about 2 hours, 2.5 hours before for it to be effective. Here are some of the supplements on the market. Neo 40, which is a lozenge. You can use beet juice. You can use these powders, different powders that are out there. You can use a concentrated shot, right? And these will work. A couple of these products work faster than others. So, in conclusion then, anabolic resistance may contribute to the loss of muscle mass and strength with age. The decline in the ability to generate nitric oxide via Enos and Enos with age may contribute significantly to the development of anabolic resistance. Consuming a nitric oxide donor or dietary nitrate prior to a protein or amino acid supplement may restore normal protein synthesis in aged skeletal muscle. Exercising while on a nitric oxide donor may increase the rate of muscle hypertrophy and angiogenesis in older adults. And increasing nitric oxide via dietary means or supplementation may be an effective strategy to combat age-related sarcopenia and maintain muscle quality. Right? So we think about what older individuals can do. One, they can increase the amount of protein in their diet. Two, they can take a increase the amount of nitrate in their diet. Right? And three, they can take in some type of nitric oxide donor or producer that about a couple of hours prior to working out, and that's going to be very effective in improving protein synthesis and muscle development. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the eye-opening speech. Okay. I'm going to translate in Chinese. 今天这个报告对我们来讲是算是一个在运动营养学里面非常重要，而且在长远来讲，在过去都没有被注重的一个主题，就是有关于那个肌肉的这个合成的这个部分。我想这个主题为什么很重要？在前面的这个报告已经讲得非常清楚。就是随着年龄的增加，在30岁开始，我们的肌肉基本上是小幅度的减少，然后在50岁的时候开始这个减少的幅度开始加大，那70岁的时候，它的这个肌肉减少的这个速度会变得非常非常的明显，它这个会成为很多就是不是只有寿命上面的一个问题从那个报告可以看得出来，肌力跟肌肉量直接影响到你的寿命，它还立即影响到的是生活品质的一个问题，也就是说，当你年纪大到一个程度的时候，如果说你的肌肉它是没有办法维持住的话，生活品质会被严重的这个影响。那大家目前已经知道的这个资讯，就是你要去防止这件事情来做，什么样的一个介入方式是可以防止这件事情？到目前为止，大概已经有在整个科学界、运动营养学界已经有一个共识，就是你必须要透过这个肌力训练，也就是说我们平时讲的所谓的阻力训练，那加上足够的这个蛋白质的这个摄取，那大部分过去的研究呢都是焦聚在运动会影响到肌肉的肌肉量的这个增加，主要是因为肌肉是由蛋白质所组成的，这是大部分人的这个观念。那今天这个演讲主题给各位有非常大的一个其中有一个非常大的在知识上面的一个震撼，就是说，实际上如果说你去看肌肉内它的这个 有关于合成肌管的这个控制的这个关节性的分子它虽然是减少，但实际上它的关节性不在这里面，而是在肌肉细胞的外部。那肌肉细胞的外部什么地方呢？最主要的就是一个是神经细胞，一个是血管细胞，特别是在血管细胞的这个部分。我们可以看得到，就是说在这个里面的这个演讲中，你可以看到随着年龄的增加，血液中微血管所释放的这个 NO 一氧化氮的这个浓度量实际上是下降的。那这个下降呢，跟什么有关呢？跟血管中有一个很重要的蛋白质叫做 Enos， 叫做 Endothelial Nitric Oxide Synthesis， 叫 Enos 这个蛋白质，它会明显的这个减少。那这个蛋白质的减少就会直接影响到血管中这个一氧化氮的产量。也就是说呢，我们虽然年纪大到一个程度越大，那我们的这个 NO 血管血管都还在，但实际上血管中释放 NO 的这个机制，释放一氧化氮的这个机制，实际上是没有办法，它实际上是下降的速度非常的快。那你可以看得到，就是说肌肉减少的这个趋势，在年龄上面肌肉减少这个趋势，实际上呢是跟 NO 减少的这个趋势，以及 Enos 减少的这个趋势是非常的吻合。那这个解释到一个很重要的一个现象，就是说我们现在知道，所有人都知道，你要维持肌肉最好的方式，你就是要靠阻力训练，跟靠足够蛋白质的这个摄取。但是呢，有一个现象呢是也同时在发生，就是说当50岁之后呢，你就会发现，你做重量训练可以去增加肌肉蛋白质合成这样子的一个幅度。是比不上年轻人，也就是说，你年纪大，虽然这个做这个是好，但是它的效果实际上是没有年轻人那么好。那其中一个最主要的一个原因呢，就是我血管中 NO 的这个产量，它是没有办法像年轻人那么高。那如何去解决这个问题呢？今天这个Prof 教大家给各位一个非常全新的一个领域。到目前为止这方面的研究跟科学证据仍然还不是非常的多，就是说，我们用什么样的一个方式可以让肌肉中的这个 NO 的产量是可以增加？刚刚徐美芝教授已经在他的报告中已经也给各位一些药物跟食品上面的一个建议。我们在座也有很多的这个非常重要的在医学界的人士很多领导医学界的这个人士，以及有不少的营养师在这边当然，如果说我们后面会有那个 Q&A 的部分，就是说我们在12点的这个部分我们会有一个 Q&A 的部分，我们可以让大家去讨论这一方面的这个目前已经到什么样的一个程度。那Prof 教大家给各位的比较重要的一个建议就是说，目前我们有很多食品它实际上是可以补充。然后在饭前先补充，然后就可以去增加你的这个全身的这个 NO 的这个产量。那目前已经也有部分的这个科学证据证明了，就是说，如果说你有做这件事情的话，那实际上对于你运动完之后，它的这个肌肉蛋白质的这个合成，虽然没有办法100%回到像年轻人一样的程度，但是实际上已经有办法把它拉回到非常接近的一个程度。所以我们今天非常感谢那个Prof教阿姨给我们这个，就是说在这个领域里面非常前端的一个这个知识。好，那我接下来要把这个我们的演讲给下一场实际上是非常精彩。我们是不是把这个就交给我们中位？
我们现在会有20分钟的科技段，大家提供的短暂休息。那在大会先有正式预报，我们今天中午的综合会谈结束之后，大家先出去领完便当，回来这个会场吃便当。我们顺便要开会员大会，谢谢。那我们现在是休息时间，20分钟后，我们准时10点50开始下一场演讲，谢谢。